California Legislative LGBTQ Caucus. And I'd like to start by thanking those who are joining us in the room today, but also to community members who may be listening from afar. We know our community is no stranger to tough times, and these are real fears and anxieties that we are facing today that are never easy. Of course, since January 20th, there has been several directives that are not only arbitrarily punitive and hurtful, but also intended to do nothing but further divide the American people. We remain steadfast in ensuring our laws in California are followed and that we are standing up for our community members. Let us be clear. When those in positions of power bring forward unconstitutional policies, initiatives and regulations that threaten the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of others, we are going to fight back and be there for all community members. Equally as important to note, there are individuals with hate in their hearts who are actively aiming to erase our transgender and gender nonconforming siblings from various facets of existence. This is the same tactic that was used decades ago to try to eradicate gay and lesbian members of our community. And this tired and outdated tactic will not only again fail, it will not stand the test of time. Since before, during, and after the election, we've been working very closely with a number of community members and stakeholder organizations to strategically map out the work that lays ahead of us in these next few years. Today, we stand here united to announce our annual legislative priorities to tackle top-line issues impacting our community members in the Golden State. This year, our legislative priorities generally fall into two buckets. Unfortunately, there has been a growing national attack on LGBTQ community members, particularly TGI community members, further elevated since January 20th Inauguration Day. To that effect, our first bucket will be focusing on protecting against anti-LGBTQ attacks. While we need to focus on playing defense to protect our communities, it is also imperative that we do not falter in supporting everyday challenges impacting community members here in California. As such, our second bucket focuses on advancing our progress and addressing everyday challenges impacting our community. Now, today you hear from myself and colleagues exactly how we plan to achieve such efforts and to stand against targeted hate and provide utmost protections that support our most impacted communities. So I'll go ahead and kick it off as chair with our first area, our first theme and subject area, and that's on privacy rights and freedom from retaliation bills. A bill that I have introduced is AB 82. As regressive, unlawful directives are targeting our community and increase, make no mistake, decisions on health care should be made between patients, their families, and their doctors, not by any politicians or outside actors. Reports not only highlight hostile out-of-state entities utilizing our data systems to target those who are accessing legal health care services, but also illuminate a rise in harassment and violence directed towards those who work in health care settings. As such, AB 82 will provide necessary statutory enhancements by protecting the privacy of California's health data and expanding existing protections to uphold the safety of patients, their families, and healthcare professionals. First, AB 82 will prohibit the reporting of testosterone and mifepristone to California's Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, or CURES. Second, it expands the state's Safe at Home program to include healthcare professionals who provide gender-affirming care. Third, it expands existing protections from adverse action against loved ones who are simply ensuring that their loved ones access the utmost necessary health care. Fourth, it expands the FACE Act, existing protections against the doxing of healthcare professionals and patients to include those who are providing or accessing gender-affirming healthcare services. And fifth, AB 82 will expand existing confidentiality protections for the exchange of health information to include gender-affirming health care. It's imperative that we support the privacy and safety of patients and their families whose basic obligation is to ensure the utmost health for themselves and their loved ones, as well as the safety of our healthcare professionals, whose basic obligation is to provide necessary care for their patients as they were trained to do. And now I'd like to hand it over to my colleague, Assemblymember Zuber.
I always seem to get calls when I'm coming up to the podium. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Assemblymember Ward. I'm honored here to stand today with you as we continue our fight for equality, social justice, and safety for the LGBTQ plus community in California. At a time when extremist attacks on our rights are escalating across the country, California must continue to lead, and that's why I'm proud to introduce key legislation to protect our community and ensure that everyone can live freely and authentically. AB 715, sponsored by Planned Parenthood and Equality California, strengthens protections for attorneys who provide legal services to patients, medical providers, and others seeking or offering health care services that are lawful in California but may be illegal in other states. No attorney should fear punishment for defending fundamental rights like abortion or gender-affirming care. But this bill is not just about protecting attorneys, it's about protecting the people they represent. AB 715, again sponsored by Planned Parenthood, Equality California, and Women's Lawyers Association of LA. In addition to this privacy rights and freedom bill, I'm also authoring AB 1084, one of the two LGBTQ Caucus priority bills that addresses vital records. This bill will help make it easier for transgender and non-binary Californians to obtain accurate identification documents by streamlining the court process for name and gender marker changes, reducing wait times from 6 weeks to just 2. This bill will also require a new birth certificate or marriage licenses to be issued within 2 weeks if it includes a request for a gender change. This simple but critical change will help ensure that people can live safely and be recognized for who they truly are. I'm proud to say that this bill is also sponsored by Equality California. These bills are about protecting our freedoms, our identities, and our rights to essential health care. I look forward to working with all of you to get them passed and signed into law. Thank you, and I'd now like to introduce Senator Chris Cobbledone.
Good morning. I'm Senator Christopher Cabaldon, and a generation and a half ago, because folks across this country ignored the science, the public health, epidemiology, and engaged in the HIV/AIDS panic that threatened the lives, the safety, the civil rights, and civil liberties of so many in our communities, California stepped up and responded, and we protected for the data confidentiality to try to make sure that folks weren't attacked on the street, that they weren't subject to proposals to quarantine our entire community in leper colonies, but instead that this would be a safe haven. So we continue to treat HIV and AIDS as some sort of special disease in California. And SB 278, which I've introduced, rectifies that situation. Now we know what the science is. We know the progress that we have made and that we must make to combat the HIV epidemic. And we can do it without panic because we listen to the doctors, we listen to the patients. And so today, 1 out of 4 Californians living with HIV do so without getting the essential services they need, including HIV viral load testing. And as a result, we're not able to provide the kinds of services, but also the incentives and other benefits through managed care, through community-based organizations and public health to get them the testing they need. There are proven strategies throughout the United States that other states have engaged in that we simply cannot do because we're living with Reagan-era laws that prevent the sharing of that data, that confidential data, among public health, managed care, and the patients themselves. And so SB 278 will right that wrong. The well-intentioned law that we passed 35 years ago to allow managed care and public health to connect and to serve these patients so that they will have access to the essential services and to the viral load testing that they need to be safe. Next, I'd like to introduce a member of the legislature who was here when we took on so many of these challenges and led the way to protect our community when hate and demonization took precedence over science and over community and over democracy, and who is remains a steadfast leader in this field, and that's State Senator John Laird.
Thank you. And I appreciate that bill. And what I'm going to talk about is another next step. Because when I and 5 other gay men founded the Santa Cruz AIDS Project in the mid-1980s, the stigma was large. If there was disclosure of somebody's status, it could lead to any of a number of things: loss of job, personal attacks. And as a result, there were the privacy protections that really kept people from going underground at a time we wanted to embrace them in services to make sure that there was not transmission and to make sure that they received the best services that were possible at the time. You fast forward 30 years, and now the stigma is lessened, and the treatment is much improved, but the law in many ways is where it was 30 years ago. And we have had legislation that allows local and state public health officials to discuss specific patients with HIV for the purpose of coordinating treatment or dealing with the spread of the disease. But it does not include healthcare providers. And so Senate Bill 504 will include health care providers in the ability to make disclosures to make sure that there is a continuum of care and a continuum of treatment. And just like the public health officials, the providers will only be able to disclose identifying information when necessary for disease control or care coordination. This is a small step, but it's an important one if you're a person in this category. And so I look forward to working with everybody to secure passage of this bill. And now it's my pleasure to introduce one of our first-term colleagues who actually has long experience in public policy and the public realm, Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez.
Okay. Thank you, brother. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Gonzalez, Assemblymember from the 54th Assembly District, which is downtown Los Angeles and surrounding communities. I want to thank everybody who is here with us today. And as I always tell folks, especially with my colleagues behind me today, is that decisions are made by those who show up. And that's what we're doing here today. We're showing up for those in California who need us the most. This current federal administration, as we know it and seen every day, is set on creating chaos and disrupting fundamental medical access, including potential access to HIV prevention, medications like PrEP. We're seeing the progress that this administration is rolling back that we have made in this country over even up the last 4 years, and especially here in California by attacking our LGBT plus community. In partnership with my brother, Assemblymember Matt Haney, I'm proud to have introduced Assembly Bill 554, sponsored and supported by Equality California and, of course, Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara. This bill will safeguard patient-provider choice, ensuring flexibility in selecting the most suitable PrEP medication for patient adherence, while also allowing small, local clinics to receive timely reimbursement for these drugs. Clinics, as we know it, serve as a lifeline for communities and communities of color. As we know, HIV/AIDS epidemic has disproportionately impacted our minority communities. In California alone, 57% of the total new HIV diagnoses in 2022 were Latino. Expanding access to these critical medications will help reduce new HIV infections and address the ongoing disparities in healthcare access. Assembly Bill 554 is about protecting patient and provider choice, ensuring that individuals can access the most suitable medication for their needs without unnecessary delays and roadblocks. Together, we can strengthen HIV prevention efforts and support marginalized communities most affected by this epidemic. Up next, I'd like to introduce Senator Scott Wiener.
Thank you, Assemblymember. I want to thank all of my colleagues, and particularly our leaders, Assemblymember Ward and Senator Menjivar, for really pulling us together and making sure that we are standing up for the LGBTQ community as the community is under assault by the President of the United States. And for anyone who watched the speech last night, this president is deeply obsessed with transgender people in an extremely unhealthy and dangerous way. We know that in the first 2 weeks of his administration, he issued not one, not two, not three, not four, but I think 5 executive orders demonizing transgender people, attempting to erase their existence, attempting to remove their access to health care. Imagine that. In the first 2 weeks of a new presidential administration, this tiny population, 1% of the population, is subjected to 5 executive orders, not lifting them up, but trying to tear them down. It is horrifying. And last night, the President of the United States, in his State of the Union, spent more time talking about transgender people than he spent talking about the cost of eggs or the cost of housing or the cost of gas or any other really significant issue. Just he's completely obsessed in a toxic, destructive way with trans people, and they're literally trying to erase trans people's existence, including children, and they're threatening to incarcerate teachers who treat their trans students like full human beings, and so on and so forth. And so we in California, we need to stand up for our trans community and be very clear that if Donald Trump and his cronies are going to come for trans people, they're going to have to come through us. And so I have two bills that we've introduced this year to support the trans community. First, Senate Bill 59 will ensure that court records of name changes and gender marker changes on documents will be deemed confidential, so that people to reduce the risk of harassment and stalking and doxing. We know that the folks who are trying to tear down trans people like to, use their dead name and misgender them. And so this builds on previous work done by Assemblymember Ward to apply these protections and confidentiality to minors. We're now going to expand that via SB 59 to adults as well. The second bill is SB 497, which builds on and strengthens our trans state of refuge law, a law that I authored in 2022, Senate Bill 107, which really basically provides that unless the Constitution requires California to honor a warrant from another state or a subpoena or an extradition request relating to these hateful laws in other states attacking the trans community and trying to criminalize the parents of trans children, that if people feel they need to come to California because they don't feel safe in their state, we're not going to honor these warrants, extradition requests, and subpoenas unless we are compelled by the United States Constitution to do so. SB 497 expands this law, SB 107, to apply to adults and not just children, to apply to teachers who are being threatened with criminalization for supporting their trans students. It also will now require a warrant to access certain health information about trans people. And if you access it without a warrant, then that will be a crime, a misdemeanor. So when we say that we're going to do everything we can to protect trans people in California, we mean it, and that means protecting them from red states that are trying to destroy them, and it means protecting them from the President of the United States. Thank you, and next is, what? Oh, I'd like to turn it over now to my great colleague from the Central Coast, Assemblymember Dawn Natus.
Thank you so much. And I want to start by saying thank you to the chair and the vice chair of the LGBTQ caucus and to all the members of the caucus for their leadership and really making sure that California's children and families and residents are safe and taken care of, and for fighting to lead the way always. And in 2020, I have AB 1487, the 2TGI Wellness and Equity Fund. In 2020, California established the first of its kind Transgender Wellness and Equity Fund to ensure sustained investment in programs that provide health care, housing, support, and community resources to the transgender, nonconforming, and intersex communities, or TGI communities. In 2022, we provided explicit support, visibility, and representation to members of the gender, nonconforming, and intersex communities by renaming the fund TGI Wellness and Equity Fund. And these were critical steps in addressing the long-standing health inequities faced by the TGI community. However, as we've seen and heard today, there are attacks over and over and intensifying from the federal administration and are trying to erase people's personhood, and it's absolutely dangerous to the TGI community and to all LGBT communities, and California cannot be complacent. So our leaders are doing everything we can to uplift the TGI community. The fund is a valuable tool that could be doing even more to support the TGI individuals, particularly immigrants, asylees, transitional age youth, and members of the indigenous communities. And so that's why I've introduced AB 1487, which is sponsored by the Trans-Latine Coalition. The bill will change the name of the fund to the Two-Spirit, Transgender, Gender Nonconforming, and Intersex, or 2TGI Wellness and Equity Fund, explicitly providing representation and support for the Two-Spirit community. And it will also expand eligibility for grant funds to include programs that provide workforce development training for 2TGI individuals, resettlement and social integration programs for 2TGI asylees and immigrants, which is even more important than ever, as well as diversion programs and outreach to transitional age 2TGI youth. Importantly, the bill will also expand the definition of healthcare to include mental health care as an essential component of overall well-being for the 2TGI community. And finally, these changes will ensure that more 2TGI individuals have access to life-saving services, economic stability, and pathways to social integration. So again, a deep thank you to the LGBT Caucus for prioritizing this bill, and I would now like to introduce Assemblymember Jackson.
Thank you so much. I have introduced AB 449, dealing with making sure that the narratives that are shown on our televisions, on radio, on social media, reflect the humanity and uplifts the dignity and humanity of all people, particularly those who usually top the list on California's annual hate crime reports. Since 2022, we have seen historic increases in hate violence, white supremacist and white Christian nationalist propaganda that have put the lives of our most marginalized and historically oppressed populations at risk every day. And whenever we see these things happening on TV or social media, there is a correlation between the increase in hate crimes. So when the president started talking about the China virus, guess what happened in our next hate crimes report? API hate crimes rose. When he continues to talk about issues of DEI and issues of drugs and violence, African-American hate crimes continue to top the list in terms of hate crimes. When he begins to do all kinds of things of anti-Semitic behavior, guess what happens? Our Jewish brothers and sisters and Muslim brothers and sisters continue to see the rise in hate crimes. So guess what has happened with our transgender and other LGBTQ communities? When he continues to do, and the Republican Party continues to use the boogeymen and women of the LGBTQ community, we have seen a 3.6% increase from 2022 to 2023, from 391 hate crimes to 405. So AB 449 simply says, if hate is going to be in our national narrative and California narrative, so should the dignity and humanity be in our narratives as well. So it empowers the department, the California Civil Rights Department, to create its own campaigns that reflects the percentage of hate crimes of any group to make sure that we counter those things by making sure that people understand or educated about the humanity and contributions that people who are victims of hate crime actually contribute to the state of California. In other words, we're going to continue to build an anti-racist, anti-discrimination, anti-hate, anti-xenophobic state built into the very structures of California as well. So next, I will introduce Assemblymember El-Hawari to present her bill as well.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good morning. I'm Sade El-Hawari, Assembly Member representing South Central Los Angeles as well as downtown. And I'm here to talk about my bill, AB 822. And we've heard a few times, but Assemblymember Jackson really lifted it up that as hate crimes have actually gone down in most other categories, in the category for LGBTQ plus folks, hate crimes have actually gone up. And that's why we need to pass and extend the sunset date for the Commission on the State of Hate from 2027 to 2031, which AB 822 will do. It's an important step for our community because of the increase in hate crimes related to our folks, and seeing how much the federal administration has promoted hate against us, especially our trans folks. We know that it's imperative that we keep track of these hate crimes and the effects that it has on our community. The Commission provides valuable recommendations on best practices and resources for us to try to reduce the instances of these crimes. We need this important work to continue while hate crimes against our community continue to rise based on who we choose to love and based on how we identify. Thank you so much. Next to speak is Senator Cervantes.
Good afternoon. I want to first start by thanking our chair and vice chair for their leadership within our caucus. It is absolutely critical that we protect Title IX rights in our state. That is why I have introduced Senate Bill 289 in response to the changes made under the Trump administration. Existing law requires California State University and the University of California campuses to designate a Title IX office under the administration of the Title IX coordinator. 289 would establish a statewide Title IX oversight office that would, among other things, serve as a point of contact for students who are dissatisfied with the current campus-based policies or investigative procedures designed to prevent or address incidences of rape, sexual assault, or gender discrimination. This office would also extend protections to our LGBTQ plus rights to our students as well. Title IX is a vital federal law that ensures equal opportunity and protects students from discrimination based on sex and gender in educational settings. Our oversight office will play a critical role in safeguarding the rights of students by investigating complaints, providing support to survivors, as well as promoting an environment free of harassment and discrimination throughout our campuses. Our vow is to uphold these rights through SB 289 and to ensure that the educational experiences for all students is both safe and inclusive. I now would like to introduce Assemblymember Solache.
Good morning, everyone. I am proud to stand with such an amazing group of champions. Thank you, Chair Ward and Vice Chair Banjavar for having us here today. But thank all of you here today for being here present, because as my colleague said from downtown, that it's not just being present, but in my eyes, it's also uplifting our voices and making statements that we bring our lived experiences to the state capitol. You know, as a former school board member in Linwood, I am excited to carry AB 908, the LGBTQ plus inclusion and fair treatment in schools, LIFT Act. A safe and supportive environment is critical for the hundreds of thousands of LGBT students learning and growing in California schools. Unfortunately, there is significant evidence that our community and students in California continue to face disproportionately high rates of bullying, harassment, discrimination, and lack of acceptance at school. I was one of those kids one day in our school system. As a result, LGBTQ students are more likely than their non-LGBT student peers to miss instruction, for their academic performance suffer, experience psychological distress, drop out, and other harmful outcomes. AB 908 seeks to address these challenges by adding the implementation of supportive policies and initiatives to address our LGBTQ pupils' education and well-being as state priorities for school districts across the state of California. Fostering a truly inclusive and supportive environment in our schools and ensuring that safety and success of our LGBTQ students is great. What better way to show our humanity, especially during these times of uncertainty? I have had students, community members call our office fearful of what's happening in our nation today, and it is our duty as members of this legislature to stand up for our students and ensure that they feel included, feel loved, and I will always share humanity before anything else. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. And I am introducing my good friend, Alex Lee.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm Alex Lee, representing 24th Assembly District, and I'm very proud to say that my bill, AB 678, is supported by our wonderful LGBTQ caucus. While the president and his MAGA cronies are obsessed about the fiction of trans issues, we are focused on the reality of Californian problems, and homelessness remains one of the key issues that we're digging into. Now, LGBTQ people are unfortunately overrepresented in homelessness, and my bill, AB 678, will require the California Interagency Council on Homelessness to work with LGBTQ advocates and service providers to identify and recommend best practices and policies to local agencies administering homelessness programs. That way we can ensure that our LGBT folks and youth that are on the streets are connected to resources and ensure they have more efficient access to resources and housing. Because right now what we need to do is put more effort into solving real problems like homelessness than chasing ghosts that the federal administration wants to do. I'm proud to partner with Equality California and SAGE to make sure California stands with every LGBTQ plus person in California, regardless of whatever comes out of the federal government. Now I have the great honor of bringing back up our fearless leader, the beautiful, what? Oh, okay, well, also just as beautiful as well. But I will be bringing up Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Well, listen, we all, the newbies here, we all stand on the shoulders of greatness, so I want to thank you all for having us here, and I'm back. Now more than ever, our LGBTQ plus youth are under attack. California must step up to protect them, each and every single one of them. A study by the Trevor Project found that among 18,000 LGBTQ plus young people ages 13 to 24, 39% seriously considered attempting suicide. Just this past year alone, 12% attempted suicide. LGBTQ plus students face high rates of discrimination, harassment, and bullying, negatively impacting their mental health and their academic success. And especially, as we've heard the rhetoric since January 20th, this administration that makes this kind of behavior okay, and we all know that is not normal. While current law requires schools to provide crisis resources, many LGBTQ plus youth still struggle to access affirming mental health care services. My bill, AB 727, in partnership with the Sacramento LGBT Center and the Los Angeles LGBT Center, will expand the resources student needs and their families need to have access to and send a clear statement that California stands with LGBTQ plus youth and ensuring they have access to the support that they need 24/7. AB 727 is a simple but critical step in preventing LGBTQ plus youth suicide and affirming in their right to safely, with dignity, and support that they need in their schools. And I know that we're going to get resistance on this bill, and as a proud Catholic, today is also Ash Wednesday. We also have to recognize the fact what Ash Wednesday means, which is the 40 days of penance, but also about humility and what this bill does in protecting our youth and having them know that they have a lifeline to make sure they feel safe, not just today, but every single day. And that we know with the youth, especially in particular, that you have to heal the root so that the tree is stable. And with that, I'd like to introduce Assemblymember Chris Ward.
Thank you, Senator Gonzalez. Well, thank you, everybody. I think you can appreciate we have a wide range of bills that are the caucus is getting behind, introduced by our individual members. Now 14 members strong. I want to thank everybody for that's able to be here this morning, and one fantastic ally as well. We do have a few members that couldn't be here because of scheduling conflicts. I did want to be able to acknowledge our Vice Chair, Senator Caroline Menjivar, has introduced Senate Bill 418, falling under our health equity and access tier. This bill would codify into California law ACA's Section 1557 non-discrimination protections in healthcare programs and activities, and will help to proactively reaffirm existing protections in the healthcare sector. In addition, our Vice Chair Menjivar has taken leadership in supporting families, evidence in her work on enshrining health coverage for in vitro fertilization in last year's SB 729. So she has further introduced this year SB 450, which will clarify and reaffirm the confirmatory adoption process to ensure that LGBTQ parents in other states can access California courts to protect their parentage rights as long as their child was born in California. As you can see, we have an incredibly broad legislative priority package, but I think the themes are something that are universal and all Californians can get behind. Protecting your privacy and freedom from retaliation, being sure that you can appropriately access vital records, making sure that health care is equitably accessible to everybody in the state, combating hate in all of its forms, and enhancing and supporting our education and housing systems. We have a lot of work to do, and of course a lot of committee hearings ahead to be able to receive, analyze, debate, and hopefully pass this package of bills onto the governor's desk. But certainly we want to be respectful of everyone's time here, and I'm happy to open it up for questions and answers. You can visit our 2025 legislative priority pages that I think is live today on our website. I know we covered a lot of bills, so they will all be memorialized. So if you missed any notes, you can go back to that as a resource. And we look forward to receiving everybody's support that would like to come out for our committee hearings or be able to offer letters online as well. With that, I think that concludes all of our big announcements, and we'd be happy to open it up to any questions today. Yes, Ashley. Sure. The governor has his role, and we really applaud him for managing in very difficult times and leading our state. But we are a co-equal branch, and we have our responsibilities to our community members to put their issues forward as well. And so I think building on a lot of the bills that you've heard about are areas that have built on past work that we recognize shortcomings or gaps in coverage or support or issues that need to be addressed. So we will debate those. We will exercise our co-equal role as well to be able to move those issues forward, and then we'll have those conversations probably early in the fall about his consideration for signature.
I think sometimes in the news we hear about these one-off situations and as it relates to the trans community, whether that's in sports or whether that's in our prison system. What would be your message to Californians who maybe see these unique situations involving the trans community and just how this would try to,
I understand. I think the sense, but I would say, we don't see this as a one-off situation. This is absolutely a pattern and potentially a coordinated effort to be able to erase and be able to penalize and dehumanize and hurt transgender or gender nonconforming Californians, right? On on varieties of different subject areas as well. And so we see that as actually a thread line through, I think, the overarching attacks and the demonization and honestly the divisiveness that they're using. We see this as something that is potentially a distraction tool from the other bigger issues that affect everybody, right? Our general economic health, our access to housing opportunities, working on the bread and butter kitchen table issues that actually most voters want us to be able to work on, things that we shoulder as individual legislators too, and we're happy to be able to work on and focus on. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to, one, back to our two themes, defend against attacks where our Constitution, our state laws are violated, and two, advance on the work that we've already done and make sure that we don't regress. I would also add that messages that we can, send forward to Californians are, look, maybe in this 40-day season of Lent, that we give up hate. that we try to make sure that we're putting these attitudes aside and we look for a common thread that are going to help to advance everybody, because the work that we're trying to do here in addition to the defensiveness bucket, the additional work that we guides us towards issues of equity and equality does not take away anybody else's rights or liberties or pursuits of happiness. We just want to make sure that that is also extended to all Californians where we are seeing an omission. Okay, I think we'll be available for one-on-ones on any of these bills, but I want to thank everybody for their time, and we'll look forward to an active legislative season ahead. Thank you very much.